Welcome to PennGen's Inkwell podcast. My name is Jen Waters. I hope you enjoy my stories. A shiny nose showcases my love for Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. Haven't you always wanted a nose that glows red at Christmas? Each Christmas, I still look forward to watching the 1964 Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Christmas stop-motion animated television special about the famous reindeer. I even visited a reindeer park in Maryland one year at Christmas. Although most of us know the Johnny Marks song, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, not everyone knows that the song itself was based on a 1939 poem by Robert L. May, who was working as a copywriter for Montgomery Ward, a Chicago mail-order house. At the time, Robert May wrote the story of Rudolph under assignment from Montgomery Ward when his wife Evelyn was dying from cancer. As the story goes, Barbara, his daughter, loved to hear about Rudolph in the midst of the tragedy of his wife's illness. Even if you feel like an outcast, your unique individuality can be used to save the day in the most unexpected ways, like with Rudolph and his red nose on a wintry Christmas Eve. Similar to how Rudolph was created by Robert May during a difficult time in life, I wrote many stories and songs while facing difficult health challenges. This seems somewhat common in history, as Peter Pan and Mary Poppins were both written during personal tragedies involving illness. Ironically, many of the stories that society enjoys today were written when the authors needed to cheer themselves up. For many years, I might as well have felt like an outcast red-nosed reindeer. Since 1995, I had experienced strange health symptoms. I was allergic to every single thing on the food allergy blood test at Georgetown University Hospital. I had hives, rashes, migraines, and burning sensations in my body. My ears would ring. I had extreme fatigue for unknown reasons. I was told I had toxic metal poisoning, even parasites. The worst symptom was that every now and then the room would move with dizzy vertigo attacks, even sometimes when I was driving, and usually the only thing I could do was go home and sleep. At least 3 times I passed out and ended up in the emergency room. One time I was standing in the CVS aisle in Arlington, Virginia, trying to find Benadryl for the hives that made my legs swollen, and the next thing I remember was waking up in the ER. Another time I hit my head on the bathroom sink when I blacked out. Once, I could not stop throwing up and ended up being taken in an ambulance to the ER, and then I slept on the couch for a week. Since the doctors gave me no clear diagnosis, I had no idea what the problem was. From 2005 through 2008, I did rounds of chelation, hydrogen peroxide, and Myers vitamin IVs, and I thought I was better. But when I stopped the IVs, then I felt exhausted again, unsure why, so I did another round of chelation IVs in 2010 through 2012, and then I started IVs again in 2016. In 2017 and 2019, when I was diagnosed with DCIS-contained breast cancer and underwent skin and nipple-sparing mastectomies with stem cell breast reconstruction, I was still trying to understand what was going on. I did more rounds of high-dose vitamin C IVs, this time with artesunate. My diet was excellent, and I exercised almost every day, and I had a good gene makeup. Finally, in September of 2020, in the height of the COVID pandemic, I took an IGeneX blood test to investigate if I had Lyme disease, and shockingly enough, it was positive. The Prime Spot and the Polity Spot RGCC tests, as well as Vibrant Wellness Lyme Panel blood tests, were also positive for Lyme with multiple co-infections. Not only did I have high IgG infections, but I also had active IgM, Lyme, Borrelia burgdorferi, and several co-infections. Years ago, different doctors ran blood work to test for Lyme from standard labs, but the tests came back with false negatives because mediocre tests are not sensitive enough to give an accurate result. In recent years, it seems like more people are being diagnosed with Lyme. For instance, country singer Shania Twain has spoken about her battles with Lyme disease and blacking out because of it. Today, my doctors think that I probably had the Lyme infection since childhood, where I also suffered supraventricular tachycardia with a 280 per minute heartbeat in the 1st and 4th grades and would constantly throw up. I eventually outgrew the SVT, and I have not had heart problems since then. Lyme disease is especially bad in the Pennsylvania area, and you can contract Lyme through mosquito bites, not only tick bites. I grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And some people are bit and never notice the famous bullseye rash that is supposed to appear after being bit by a tick with Lyme. If not killed off in the acute stage, the Lyme can collect other varying infections in the body in order to gain strength and become chronic, such as Epstein-Barr, strep, mold, toxic metals, chicken pox that lead to shingles, and parasites, which all compromise the immune system. It is still astounding to me that I did so many things in life with Lyme and co-infections. It seems to me that Lyme disease is another epidemic, similar to COVID, where many people are misdiagnosed, and they are suffering and ridiculed because of it. Chronic illness seems to attract gossip and humiliation, where very supposed prayerful people will tell you all kinds of crazy things, like God allowed you to be sick, so you must deserve it because you might have sinned or did not pray correctly or hard enough. The best of all is when someone would shame you by acting like you are lazy and not working hard enough when you don't feel well. Obviously, the reasoning and judgment of this mindset is off, and I don't think the thousands of people diagnosed with Lyme disease each year deserve to be bit by a tick carrying horrible illness. Since prescription antibiotics can't fully kill Lyme in a chronic state, in September 2020, I started daily herbs and supplements, such as cryptolipis, cat's claw, Japanese knotweed, yucca root, olive leaf, sweet wormwood, black walnut, and Chinese skullcap, which made me so sick that I had pain everywhere all day long. So I started weekly high-dose vitamin C, NAD, and glutathione IVs through 2021. I also started doing regular SOT serums from Greece, made from your own blood as a type of vaccine to kill the specific Lyme strands at the intracellular level. Now I remember 2021 as the year of pain, where I felt like I had knives in my back while killing the Lyme. I tried to keep a happy face and just keep going, but it was awful. In 2022, along with the established regimen of IVs and herbs, I started ozonated saline, as ozone is supposed to be excellent at killing Lyme. Lyme is a condition that you can control if you are properly diagnosed, but it takes a lot of work and finances since the insurance companies usually do not cover the best Lyme treatments. Managing my thyroid levels, colloidal silver, mistletoe shots, peptides, endo laser treatments, chiropractic adjustments, ionic detox foot baths, Epsom salt baths, the infrared sauna, and lymphatic drainage massage have also helped me. I never drink alcohol, and I try to avoid refined sugar, gluten, dairy, and soy. I've even been told that potatoes have a toxic element in them that can set off your immune system. However, sweet potatoes are great for you. Now, don't believe anyone who tells you that you can get rid of chronic Lyme with prescription antibiotics through mouth or IV, because antibiotics only kill it off temporarily and destroy the overall gut and immune system. Then the Lyme will come back and come back worse. Hygromycin A is under review in the United States as being the only prescription antibiotic that might be able to kill the Lyme without destroying the person's gut and immune system. In the meantime, you can get rid of Lyme, but mostly through adopting a radical, healthy regimen. It is good to know that you can overcome it. If you can get the Lyme to a low level in your body, then you will not experience symptoms and lead a normal life. You can be successful at getting rid of acute and chronic Lyme, but it takes specific lifestyle choices. Word to the wise, be extra cautious about bug and tick bites. And if you have chronic fatigue with strange symptoms, take an IGeneX or Vibrant Wellness Lyme test. You owe it to yourself to be healthy. IGeneX blood tests are usually free to patients with Medicare. Now, please enjoy my recounting the story of how Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer came into existence in a very ironic way. Shiny Nose is scored to Christmas Reindeer by Eric Baines. I wish the world was a brighter place, said Robert May, working on his latest copywriter assignment at Montgomery Ward, a successful Chicago mail order house. It was 1939, and many families were still feeling the effects of the Great Depression. Instead of making the annual coloring book, Robert was trying to draft an original Christmas story about an animal with holiday cheer. Of course, the tale had to involve Santa Claus and his sleigh. I think the poem should be about a reindeer, Robert imagined, thinking about his daughter Barbara's love for deer. A reindeer? Doubted Sewell Avery, CEO of Montgomery Ward. Are you sure that this is going to work? I always wanted to write the great American novel. I think I'm on to something with the reindeer, Robert insisted. Rollo or Reginald or Rudolph? I'm sort of leaning toward Rudolph. I think it's the most original. Rudolph is definitely an original, Mr. Avery quipped. I would have never thought of a reindeer named Rudolph. Coming home from work that evening, Robert sighed at the tiny, unkept 2-bedroom Chicago apartment. How are you feeling today, Evelyn? Robert asked, kissing his wife on the cheek. She had been bedridden from cancer for the past 2 years. I've been working on my poem about Rudolph the reindeer all day again. The reindeer with the shiny nose, his wife wheezed. I hope it's a big hit with the shoppers. Dad, let me hear the latest version, Barbara, his daughter, proclaimed, running to hug her father. I'll read it to you before bed tonight, her father promised, hugging her tightly. Let's eat some dinner now. After dinner, Barbara crawled into bed in tears, wondering, why is Mom different than other moms? She loves you very much, Barbara, Robert cried softly, holding his daughter. Let's read about Rudolph. As Robert read to her about a reindeer named Rudolph with a very shiny nose, she fell asleep. He wasn't sure if she heard the part about how everyone used to make fun of the creature. After all, reindeers are not supposed to have big, shiny red noses, and it embarrassed Rudolph every time he was teased for being different than everyone else. As the story went on, even Rudolph's family ridiculed him for his nose, calling him a red-nosed reindeer. Since the outcast was the 9th and youngest of Santa's reindeer, like many children, it made the reindeer easy to pick on. I have to figure out what good can come of Rudolph's nose, Robert whispered, kissing his daughter goodnight. Most days, I feel almost like the out-of-place reindeer. I might as well be as awkward as Rudolph. Later in the week, Mr. Avery agreed to consider drawings from Denver Gillian from the company art department. Show me something that will really work, Mr. Avery demanded. Every child has to love Rudolph. Yes, sir, Robert agreed. I'll spend the whole weekend at the zoo with Denver, if that's what we have to do. Come on, Barbara, we're off to the zoo so we can make some drawings of the deer, Robert explained when Saturday morning rolled around. We're making drawings of Rudolph. You can even help color his nose. See you later tonight. His wife coughed. Have a great day together. I'll miss you. Wish I could come. For most of the afternoon, Robert held Barbara on top of his shoulders as Denver sketched the first Rudolph. Barbara filled in Rudolph's nose with a red crayon. Oh, I wish that deer would turn his head, Denver pleaded. Look this way. Merry Christmas, Barbara called as the reindeer looked right at her. The next week, Robert sat at his desk, scribbling on pads of paper and throwing them in the trash can. As he stared out the window, he could not see through a thick fog from Lake Michigan. I've got it, he concluded. Rudolph's nose can shine like a spotlight through the fog on Christmas Eve, so Santa can make his deliveries. When the phone rang and Robert heard his wife's mother on the line, he felt sick to his stomach. Robert, you need to come to the hospital right away, his mother-in-law insisted, crying. Evelyn just died. I can hardly believe it. How am I supposed to tell Barbara that her mother has passed away? He sobbed. I'm on my way to the hospital. When he laid eyes on his daughter in a hospital waiting room chair, she cried and collapsed in his arms, kicking and yelling. It's going to be all right, Robert assured. Do you want to hear about Rudolph? The story is almost finished. No, I don't want to hear about Rudolph, Barbara blamed him. He's not real. He's just a stupid reindeer. Well, Rudolph is about as real as I can get right now. Robert cried with tears, hugging his daughter. I love you, dear. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Barbara apologized. I love you. I love Mom, too. After his wife's funeral at St. Joseph Cemetery in River Grove of Cook County, Illinois, Mr. Avery insisted that Robert didn't have to finish the Rudolph poem if he wasn't up to it. Instead, he sent flowers to the apartment. Look, you can just take a couple weeks off, Mr. Avery communicated by phone. Forget about Rudolph for a while. Thanks, but I think it's wiser that I finish the story. Robert insisted on the telephone. I need Rudolph. If you think so, his boss stammered. I know it's a really hard time for you, and I don't want you to feel stressed. It's fun for me, actually, Robert rambled. It keeps my mind on other things, and Barbara likes the story, I think. After a few more weeks of writing, Robert burst through his apartment door one evening to find Barbara eating dinner with her mother's parents. I finished the story about Rudolph, Robert exclaimed, hanging up his coat. He pulled up a chair to the table, reading the draft aloud, explaining that Santa Claus would have never made it on his annual trip around the world on Christmas Eve without Rudolph's very shiny nose, due to foggy weather conditions. All the other reindeer, like Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, and Vixen, who used to laugh and call Rudolph names, are now in awe of their youngest brother, who helps to save Christmas, because Rudolph leads the sleigh through the sky. That's great, Dad! Barbara cheered. I wish Rudolph was real, and I could meet him. Mom would be so happy. You never know how something that was once a great shame can be turned into a miracle, Robert announced. If you say so, Dad, Barbara agreed quietly, jumping on his lap. How are the pictures of Rudolph coming? We're working on it, Robert explained, showing her the latest sketches. The book should be out for Christmas. Well, if nobody else ever likes the story, I like it, Barbara encouraged him. It's my favorite Christmas story ever. By Christmas, 2.4 million copies of the poem were distributed to Montgomery Ward shoppers to great success. To think that people used to laugh and call Rudolph all kinds of names. Robert chuckled to himself. That's not happening anymore. By 1947, after Montgomery Ward gave Robert the rights to his story, Maxton Publishers, a small New York publishing company, printed a copy of the Rudolph book, and it was a bestseller. Even Robert's brother-in-law named Johnny Marks adapted the story into a famous song called Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, causing animated television specials, postage stamps, stuffed animals, comic books, games, all kinds of memorabilia. What would Christmas be without Rudolph? Robert asked himself every year for many decades. Rudolph is almost as important as Santa Claus. I think his nose made the world a little brighter after all. This has been Pen Gen's Inkwell Podcast. I wrote and performed all the original stories in the podcast. This podcast is produced by Eric Baines, who scored all the stories and poems in the series to original and public domain music. The podcast is associated with my blog of the same name, Pen Jen's Inkwell, which can be found on my website, jenwaters.com.